Hey everyone, CPO here, and I just installed these two AEM X Series gauges using the CJM Industries V3 dual pod defrost vent mounts. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked about that. So I'm going to show you that install in this video, the gauge pod install, how we're going to run the wires for the gauges, and also I'm going to show you the X Series, the AEM X Series gauge extenders that CJM sells, that if you've got the X Series gauges like what I have here, you might want to check it out. Also, another little hack that I came up with to actually mount the gauges inside the pods, which I think you'll find pretty creative. Anyway, guys, let's get to it. Hi, Todd. Everybody say hi to Todd. Todd comes over when I make videos on the car. All right, so getting started, this is the gauge pod. Again, this is the dual pod. You can also buy it as a single. And it uses this adapter to attach to your defrost vent on the driver's side of the MK7 GTI, R, Jetta, GLI. Like, there's a big variety of vehicles that this will fit. You can also get other attachment methods for the CJM Industries gauge pods, but I went with the vent pod because I wanted it up near eye level. So you're basically just screwing the vent attachment to the pod, and that's a pretty simple process. The hardware is included. Now, I mentioned these X Series gauge extenders. You can see the AEM X Series gauges are super narrow, and which is good for flush mounting, but not great for pod mounting. Normally you want some body of the gauge to go in there. And generally there's these command strips that you use for a friction fit or double stick tape or something like that. There's just not a lot of area there. So what these gauge extenders do is they connect to the backside of the X Series gauges using the gauges hardware that comes with the gauge. And that gives you basically a normal gauge profile that you can use to slip into the pod. And yeah, it allows you to have surface area to fit. Now here's my little hack. I found that if I take these little skinny rubber bands and just double them over onto the gauge body, and this will work if you have a regular gauge as well, or with the extenders. It doesn't work without the extenders on the X Series. But the rubber bands, super thin, and it will give you a great friction fit. They sort of roll up when you push it in and lock them into place. And it's actually holds really well. And I think actually I'm liking this better than the command strips, which is sort of the typical. You can also rotate and micro adjust the gauge once you have it in there, which is kind of nice. And it's also easy to remove. So just again, this is the gauge hardware that comes with the X Series gauges, and the gauge extender from CJM just literally screws onto the back, and there are slots so you can still plug in all the necessary gauge wiring. All right, again, skinny rubber band. I tried to use a regular size rubber band and it didn't work. It was just too big, but the skinny one worked well because it sort of rolls up. Anyway, yeah, that's my little hack. I hope you like that. Use it if you like. Otherwise, you can use the command strips to install the gauges into the pods. And if you're curious how the wires will run through the pod, you can see there's a hole between them and then a hole to the bottom into the vent. Now we are going to have to drill a hole into our vent out to the side of the car so we can get the gauges wires run. So I'm going to show you that process now. I'm using a little trim tool to pop off the vent cover, and then taking off the side fuse panel cover, and then also there's a little trim piece that runs along the side of the door. You'll want to take that out so you can get access to the top of that area where we're going to drill through our ducting for the defrost vent. It's going to be right here. And I'm sort of trying to figure out, I know this looks filed. This actually looks more NSFW than I expected. But I'm looking to see, where I want to drill. And it's basically the back left corner. So I'm putting some masking tape just to protect the dash surface when I drill, and then I'm shoving in this rag to capture all of the shavings, and then starting small with a small hole. And yeah, you can hopefully see that angle that I'm doing that, reaching back to feel. Now the size of your hole is going to depend on what type of wiring you need to run through and how much room you need to hold all of that wiring. I'm going to end up going about a 1/2 inch hole, May have to open it up a little bit more, but I'm going to slowly work my way up using several different drill bit sizes. And it gets easier and easier as you go. I do recommend when you get into the bigger bits that you run the drill backwards in reverse. That'll keep it from sucking down further than you want it to go. They have a tendency to grab. So after that, just vacuum up whatever I can with a little vac, and you can see when I pull this rag out, it's also dragging out some of those shavings. Yep, and then just hit it with a vacuum one more time since I have it available. Take off my masking tape, and now that job is done. And I'll show you where that hole ended up so you can get a better look at it. This is running the wire through, and this is how we're going to run the wires. I'm going to do the gauge wiring in different videos because there's a lot more to installing gauges than the pod. So I'm going to show the whole wiring thing for each gauge in a different video. But I wanted to make sure you could see where that hole ended up. And yeah, that's where it is. All right, so now I'm going to slip this in. You sort of put it at an angle and then feed it in, and it's going to be a tight fit, particularly on the Golf Rs, and it's actually going to click into place. Once you get it clicked into place in the center part, or the part that's under the gauge pod, and then you can click in the outer edge. It actually fits in super nice, very solid, and just be careful. This is, 3D printed ABS plastic, so you can't tweak on it too much, but as long as you feed it in the way I showed you and make sure that you're getting the top of the vent cover on top of the dash covering, then you should be good to go. Adjust the gauge for the angle that you want, and there you go. And take a look at the corner back there. You can see how that's nice and flush. The fits really nice, super sturdy. I'm really impressed. So stay tuned for the actual gauge installation videos. Those will be coming up soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.